Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome back. How you doing today? I hope you are all doing well. We're back again today, and we're getting the post-January window blues. You know what happens every single year. It does feel like Groundhog Day. It does feel like I have to have this discussion every single day after, especially right after January. I bet you could find almost the exact same words coming out in media and around after January last year and at the end of January last year as you are seeing right now. So I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to reveal the truth to you. And look, you can say what you will about a lot of things about me if you want. It's okay. It's okay. You can say what you will. But listen, guys, all I want to say is this. Have a little faith in the info. My opinions are, you can hate my opinions all you want. I don't give a shit. My opinions aren't me. Have faith in some of the info that I share, okay? We did this last year. We did this in summer. I remember sitting there in the early part of the summer going, guys, don't worry. We have the money for a striker. We have the money for a striker. And I remember at the end of January telling you, we didn't spend in January. We will spend in the summer. There will be 200 million. And we had all of these things and all of this stuff going on. And it all worked out. Let it all work out. Okay. But there is truth. And I know what I'm talking about on certain subjects. On other subjects, I'm just a dummy like the rest of us. Okay. But on others, especially when it comes to the financials, ye of little faith, do not worry. I will lead you into the promised land of understanding, and you won't have to be stressed and concerned about the future, okay, of United. So we'll get into that. I'm going to talk about that. I want to talk about some of the funny things here about we did try to make deals in January, or at least looked at it. There's some mixed messaging on that. I want to explain the finances as well. And I'm watching Chelsea versus Arsenal in the background too, as I'm sure many of you are. And I'm honestly not sure who I want to lose more. I don't know about you guys, but I really can't pick who I dislike more. Mostly because of Garnacho's comments and things like that. You know what I mean? I'm not a huge fan of Chelsea. I don't have a huge problem with them either, but I just don't want Garnacho winning anything. But at the same time, like Arsenal not being able to ever win a trophy under Arteta cracks me up endlessly, and I hope it continues forever. Hello, Stuart. Hello, Jacob. Hello. I understand Ornstein's words. We'll talk about all of those words and everything as well. A City ITK says we're getting Baleba. Do you think we are? And I know who you're talking about. Tolmy's hairdo, real Tolmy. The City ITK has been doing things for a long time. He's had very good contacts, but I do recall situations in the past where information about other clubs and things didn't really come through. But regardless, certainly I would say it's not bad information. The reason why it's not wrong information to mention and discuss the idea of Baleba joining United is, I've said this, 10 days ago, we did this whole thing about the fact that we actually would like to get Baleba and Anderson, and I will talk about that soon. Baleba would like to choose, of course, United. He would join United over pretty much anybody. He's already sold on the idea of joining United, so it's not a concern on that front. So there's some truth in behind that. Does that mean a deal is agreed or something? No, but we'll talk through all of that as well, and I'll explain the truth to everything. But how are you all doing? Is everybody doing well today? I hope you're having a good week. I hope you're having a good Tuesday. It's Tuesday. I hope you're having a good Tuesday. Or Tuesday, as you say, across the pond. I hope you're having a good one. And there's lots to talk about today as well. So let's first get right into it and look at some of the stories that are out there. Okay, where was this one? There was a story from, of course, the Daily Mail. Um, there was a story, of course, from the Daily Mail saying, that United had considered even late into the January window whether to do
Does
a
the
deal.
potential next manager and their long-term targets have to align to get the job? I mean, what if Tuchel comes in and says I don't want to Balba or Anderson and get me these guys? What then?
Good question, Jason. Very, very good question. And I appreciate that, because I think it's worth an answer that should calm like any concerns or quell nerves about that. Whoever comes in next as manager is, of course, it's going to be needed that they're in alignment with the targets we already have. Okay. They're not going to get that veto that Ten Hag had. They're not going to have the ability to shut things down. The club-led recruitment policy is still going to continue, whoever is next. So if during the discussions with coaches, they're going to let them know of their plans, and the conversation is going to be quite a bit different. It's not going to be, all right, Thomas, who do you want? It's going to be, listen, Thomas, this is who we're recruiting. I like calling him Thomas because it feels like it's easier to like bully him. Like people call you by your first name when they're talking down to you. No, but seriously, like, listen, Thomas, Tomas, here's what we're doing this summer. We're going to be signing X player, this player. This is what we're building. This is the squad you're going to have to work with. And that'll be a part of those discussions. It is one of the reasons why you feel you might face some difficulty in bringing in Thomas Tuchel, is because you did face difficulty in getting him to take the job in the first place due to these exact same concerns, where he wasn't in alignment with what they wanted in the market. Stuart with the 10 gifted memberships to the community. Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate you, as always, for supporting me in the community. It means an awful, awful lot. It's really, really excellent. And some good people getting those rewards as well. So thank you, Stuart, you legend of the channel. Thank you so much. So, that was one of the issues that we even had the first time. It's also where the idea of Michael Carrick potentially getting the job in the long term is probably fairly appealing to people. Probably fairly appealing to people at the club, because he's somebody who's going to be fine with what you want. He has the experience in England and all of that. But of course, maybe the targets all align with someone like Tuchel, and it works out. But I think that just has to be taken under consideration, is that we won't hire somebody if they're not totally in alignment. I think we've seen that there's a strong hand, and we can disagree with the direction at times and wonder whether they've got it right and all of that. But there is a strong hand at the wheel in terms of what Jason Wilcox is doing with this football club right now as a director or director of football and all of that. It is a firm grip he has on the club. Okay. One can like that, dislike it, doesn't matter, but he has a firm grip on it. We are not going to do what he doesn't want to do. That's really how it stands at the moment. Now, if the rest of the season goes tits up, we have a bad end to the season, obviously his influence and his strength on that grip will be lessened dramatically, to the point of maybe he does lose a job. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the more time that goes on, the better it reflects on Mr. Wilcox. But he has that grip. And so whatever happens, it's going to be in alignment with what he wants to do. And it's his recruitment ideas and his shaping of this team that are driving things forward at this point in time. And that's the road we are on. That's the track we're going down, and that's what any manager we bring in will have to accept. So that's what we're looking at. Now, in this article from the Daily Mail, kind of what I said yesterday, they mentioned and sort of confirmed that United were looking at a deal. Okay, they were looking at a deal even late into January for a big money midfielder. And it is funny when you take that and you weigh it up against, well, we don't have money, we don't have this, we don't have that. Because obviously those things don't necessarily go hand in hand. And look, you can get into debates over semantics on, did we actually try? Were we just looking at it? Blah, blah, blah. The reality is, as I've said before, United looked into the situation of these players. And the reason we didn't do it in January is not because it is very specifically for this reason. The costs quoted or floated between intermediaries, agents, etc., which is usually how we inquire about players, where you're not going to get the directness of clubs and things. The costs associated and quoted for the major targets that we had were simply viewed as too high, where compared to what we expect them to be in the summer. You understand what I mean by that? So it's like and in some cases untouchable, but there, I believe in the situation of Brighton that they did, or through intermediaries did once again sort of name a price. However, it was viewed as excessive, right? Where they're still going to be asking for this 100 to 120 million and things like that during January. So, I think that it's worth considering that we did look into this, but essentially the risk assessment that they made is, look, we're not going to overpay 20 to 40 million over the value we view of a player just to get in January. We'll take the risk of not making that signing and seeing how it works out. And like I said yesterday, we'll see what happens on that front. But they did explore it, and they were willing, and it's just simply the strategy has been made and that they've stuck to, and that they stuck to last year, is that the valuations for the players that they have, they're going to stick to. And it's kind of as simple as that. And they're not going to stretch too much on those valuations. Now, those valuations could be rather high. Elliot Anderson's valuation within the club may be as high as 100 million. And so if he's available at 100 million in summer, that they might be willing to pay that. But yeah.
Why are fans against a yes man gaffer? Anyone that kicks back on owners/Doff gets the boot. Just creates divide in club, dressing room and fan base.
Yeah, I mean, you know why, Matt? I think you have a good point there. This idea of a yes man is like denigrated, right? But by even calling it like a yes man, but what are we really talking about here? We're talking about somebody that does the job that they were appointed to and is in alignment with the people above them whose jobs are different. The modern day football structures are set up in such a way where a lot of the responsibilities are being spread out more. And so when someone comes in, you're really just saying, what is being called a yes man is, and I'm guilty of this at times too, and thinking, how does this work? Is really just somebody who doesn't interfere in other departments in which they are not an expert, right? Because why would you want that anyway? Why, Ten Hag wasn't a yes man, and he fucking ruined our club. You know what I mean? Like, it's just strange. You know what I mean? But I think where it comes from is that we've had absolute incompetence from above. And so, of course, we've had this hope that someone strong comes in who fixes everything. Because the concern, the worry, the feeling is that the owners or the people in charge are going to have ideas that are detrimental to the club. So if the ideas from the top are shit and their ideas are bad, and you think that, and you're of the belief that they're trying to destroy the football club and that they're going to do this and they're going to do that, then a yes man is shit, right? Because, you know, if it's Lex Luthor saying destroy Manhattan and you have yes men, well, that's bad. You want people pushing back on it. If Donald Trump is the president of the United States, you would kind of hope that the whole government is full of yes men, because you would hope that people will push back against certain ideas and certain things that are happening if you don't trust the guy in charge. So I think in United's case, most people are looking at the last 10 to 15 years and going, well, we've had like people less qualified than you or I at the top running the football club and making their intentions known, and their ideas are what's coming down the line. Ed Woodward playing Football Manager on the train. Like, that's what's been driving our transfers and our decisions. So in that case, you really do want someone strong to come in and say, I know what I'm doing. Stay out of my way. Push back. You need this. You need that. Whatever. You know what I mean? And in that case, you want them kind of pushing back on it. You know what I mean? You want them pushing back. But we don't have that anymore, right? And to it, maybe, you know, I've had my moments this year of major doubts. I've had my moments this year of major doubts. I've had my moments here of, you know, major problem of concerns about whether these guys know what they're doing. But if we believe that they do, then we want someone who aligns with that, you're saying, we're going to build a great squad for you. We have a great idea of how football has to be played. We're going to give you the money. We're going to give you the players. We want someone who will implement the tactics on the pitch, and we don't want you necessarily interfering and blowing up over the things that aren't your job. That's understandable. But I think that it's a strange one in that respect. But I think mostly it comes down to, if you believe that the people in charge are idiots, then you want a strong manager who comes in, brings a lot of his own ideas, a Fergie type, who's going to have tons of say on the club, who's going to push back, who's going to shape things behind the scenes, not just on the pitch. If you believe that the guys in charge are decent and doing their job well, then you're not really going to worry about it, you know? And that's the difference. That's really all it comes down to, is that separation in opinion. I think if they pull this off correctly, when you look at their if you separate it out, look at their transfer record. Okay. Yeah, I don't want a manager interfering in the transfers, right? Because I think that we've gotten as best as it's ever been for us in that front. Yeah, correct RSV in terms of Joe Glazer. You know, it's the best it's ever been in that part. All right. In terms of things like health, medical, fitness, the improvements that have been made behind the scenes around Carrington, spot on. You know, I'll harken back to the idea, like Jose Mourinho didn't like data, didn't want them to wear monitoring things, and he liked to do it all themselves. Well, no, there's evidence that a lot of the implementations that we've done, the upgrades, the things that we've improved in these areas have made a big impact. So ideally, you want a manager who's not pushing back on those things, because you have a record of a competence now in that area, right? You look at, then you can go to the football, the tactics and things, and say, well, there might be a general idea from above of what to do. And from there, you want to give the coach the most autonomy to decide the team, decide the system, decide everything on that front and push it forward. So that's the general concept. And I think it's a good question, but like I said, I think you can simply put it down to, you know, you can really just put it down to, do you trust the people in charge at all or not? And if you don't, then you're going to run the, well, I don't want no yes man line. And if you do, then it's not so much of a worry anymore. And in fact, you probably want someone who's not going to be so much more who's not going to complicate the situation a little bit. So that's a long-winded answer to that question. Jason with 10 gifted memberships to the community. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate you very much as well for always being here and a part of it. Absolute legends. You and Stuart there, just bar for bar on the gifted membership. So thank you for that. Thank you very much for that. Incredible stuff. What do the gifts do? They give you a nice green name, and if you keep that membership going, you get little logos and things next to your name and that stand out. And they give you access to members' videos, and I post members' videos about at least monthly during the summer, more often than that. So that's a little extra. Stuart, I'm going to read yours out. It's going to read out again a little bit later after these 10 are done. If we have a transfer window like last summer, then we finish in top 4 easily. Need to get it done early, though. Yeah, I mean, I would argue if we have a transfer window like the last one, that quality of 4 signings, we were discussing this yesterday, I would argue we'll be in the title race. If we have 4 hits in our starting 11, I argue we'd be in a title race. Because I'm assuming that gives you a center back, 2 midfielders, and an attacker. I think that puts you in a title race with how the league is and the gap between the teams being a little bit smaller and everything. I think from a first 11 perspective, it puts you in a title race. But yeah, I agree. We do need to get it done early and work hard at it. But look, so they decided to put it off, not overpay a bunch of money until going into summer. Here's what Rich Fay said, and this kind of backs up a lot of things. And I'm just going to run through all of the stories and then kind of explain.
Like last summer, then we finish in top 4 easily. Need to get it done early, though.
Yes. You're torn between a proven manager that takes no shit in a structured football club and just a coach. I think that hopefully they could be the same guy. You know what I mean? I'm a bit hopeful that they could be the same guy somehow. That would be the best bet. The same guy. Hopefully I could see that. That's why I've said it. There's names I prefer. We did like the whole manager, like a chart of like tallying up points and things, because ideally we get somebody who has a decent level of Premier League experience and success.
James, can you name one top manager in the world that would accept to work like this? Sorry, but I disagree with you here, and I have not 100% faith in Wilcox, Omar, and Sir Jim.
I'll tell you one, Pep Guardiola, okay? No, Jurgen Klopp, okay? Pep Guardiola. Like, just to be very clear on this front, Pep doesn't pick players, or at least he didn't. Klopp didn't pick players, or at least he didn't when they were successful. Ancelotti is another. Xabi Alonso went into Madrid with anybody who goes to Madrid goes with basically no control. So no, I think there's a lot of managers that will work within this sort of framework. I think there's some that won't, I think there's some that won't. And I think that you have concerns over certain guys like Thomas Tuchel, things like that have previously butted heads with the boards and things like that. But I think maybe too much is being made of it. I mean, look, Pep was just whining today about how he wishes the club spent more money. He doesn't own the purse strings. He's leaving, but he doesn't own the purse strings, He doesn't pick the players, by hand. They generally go get him what he needs. I mean, look, he worked under Omar as somebody involved for that time. You know what I mean? So there's experience in this area. I think perhaps too much is being made of this. Okay? Like I've myself gone back and forth on it, but in the end, I think too much is being made on it. I think the most important thing is this for the next coach. And we've had some experiences, and not to swing too far in either direction, but we need to find a good middle ground here. We just need someone in alignment. Okay? We just need someone in alignment in general. Okay? They just have to align with the people who are in charge, and they just have to have the same ideas. And that's just a part of hiring the right manager. They have to want to play the way that you want them to play. They have to be willing to look at the squad and say, yes, I see what we can do with that. And then you just see if they get results. They're always going to have their own opinions. Bear that in mind. Nobody's going to sit here and tell you no manager's going to come in and have different opinions. Of course they're going to have different opinions. Of course they're going to have different opinions. Of course they're going to have different ideas. That's not the problem. It's, at the end of the day, what it all comes down to is success. And that's why I think too much is made of this. If Ruben Amorim was very successful and we were winning a ton of games, there would have been no breakdown in relationship. Whoever comes in, takes over the squad. If we're winning, that means they're being provided a team that is giving them the ability to succeed and to win. If they're losing, it means they're either poor at coaching or they're not being given a team. Forget the rest of it. I think, honestly, my concern is when I go round and round on it a little bit, it's why I really don't like the Thomas Tuchels and the Erik ten Hags of the world as managers, and why I don't want them. Because I'm not talking about the rigidity of their system. I'm not talking about them as coaches. They freak out at the board about what they need and want, and fall out and want to control too much in areas that maybe they're not really ultimately successful in. You know, Ten Hag wanted to be in control of everything, but he was shit at it. You know, Tuchel butts heads and fights, and personally, I think Tuchel falls out with his board because he goes to them because he's not winning enough games and tries to pin it all on them at every club he goes to. When it falls off, they're not guys who want to work in a team and they want to pass the buck on to somebody else. So I'm talking about, I don't want those types of managers necessarily either. So there's a middle ground, but at the end of the day, get somebody, make sure you hired the right person that's in alignment with the team and the squad that you're building, and then go for it. So basically, there's proven managers who are like that. Again, Jurgen Klopp wasn't sitting there going, you know, I need this, that, and the other when he got in there. They did what they did. And the manager always has an opinion and is a part of the process, but they're not stopping that. You know, there are plenty of guys on that front. Poch also went against the board at Chelsea. Not really, no. At the end of what happened there was actually a split between Todd Bowley and the other guy, Egbali. And Egbali is like a micromanaging interferer monster, apparently. And that's really what caused things to fall out. It wasn't like Poch went against the board. There was a split on the board and they had these problems and it all just denigrated. And I think that situation was what evolved there. But there's a lot of managers, I think, where it's going to be okay. But I don't think it's that big of a deal. And look, at the end of the day, I'll give you examples. Kieran McKenna would be fine. Carrick would be fine. I'd be fine with either of those kind of guys as well.
Did you see
I'm just not
article
worried
about
about it.
Amorim not wanting to distract United till end of season before he said anything?
Yeah, and it's a little strange that, because it sounds as though, which wouldn't be that unusual for Portuguese, he kind of did this at Sporting when he nearly left and then did something that at the end of the season, we're going to get some sort of Amorim like tell-all. And the reaction to it will be strange. We'll see. I don't know. You know, he'll probably be able to get his side of the story out at that point, and whatever. I guess we'll see what it is. Like I've said before, I don't particularly care either way, whether that's true or it isn't, whether he does some sort of big thing or not. It's not going to change much for me. I think I have a good read on the situation in terms of balance. I just think at the end of the day, it's like this, right? Relationship analogy coming, all right? When a marriage ends and you have a divorce, you're going to get two sides of the story. Always. And one's going to say this and one's going to say that. And you're going to get all this stuff about how this is the reason why That's the reason why this is what happened. That's what happened. All this blame is going to go around when the truth of the matter is 9 times out of 10, there was simply things that were not agreed upon in the beginning in terms of the foundations for what worked. There was problems with the foundations of the relationship from the off. And those things were never worked out. And the funny part is, it's not always the big things. It's little things. You know, in marriages, one of the things one of the things that really kills them in a lot of cases is a lack of agreement over small details. Who does the dishes? Who cooks dinner? Who does the laundry? Who vacuums? Who does this? Who does that? Little things. Believe it or not. I can tell you this because I've had experience personally, but also I have experience in certain... I did quite a bit of counseling at one point for people as one of my jobs for quite some time. Sort of an interning thing. And it was lack of agreement over a lot of the little things that is really the problem more than it is the big things. And it's much more important to agree on a lot of those little things. And so generally when it all fights and blows up and things like that, there's not a lot of, it's usually the little things that were never figured out. Because in marriages, people go in to, in marriages, people go into it, oh, I love you, everything's great, there's passion, there's fire, there's desire, there's honeymoon phase, there's all those things that happen. And they go into that without realizing that there's a point where on the day-to-day, minute by minute, hour by hour, like time, you're sat at home. You're not always on the beach, flying around doing the fun shit. And it's like, what happens in those moments makes a relationship, right? And you don't think of that. And so most people don't think of those things. And then later on, it catches up to them. Well, it's the same with football clubs, managers, employees, and everything. It's always the same. More often than not, the breakdown is over the little stuff. It's like that. It's like, well, who's responsible for this little thing? Because even for a coach, even for a team, think about a week. You have 2 hours on the pitch, 1 hour beforehand, 1 hour after, and then there's another 150 hours a week of preparation in between games. And then there's months of no football. So a lot of times it's little things that have to be agreed upon. And the most important thing is that you agree exactly who is doing what and sort it out. And so from this manager perspective, I think that it's really all about that. It's more about agreeing to all of the little things. You know what I mean? Agreeing to all of the little things. Exactly how it's going to run. That's going to keep everybody happy. Keep everybody on the same page and keep this thing moving forward. So on the manager front, that's really the most important aspect of it. And I think that when they hire managers, they go, oh, wow, look at that guy's results. Like bad clubs. They hire a manager, they go, look at that guy's results, get him in. And then they fail to agree on all of these things and they cause us problems. And it's like, no, these things just have to be well sorted. And with Amorim, it failed because that wasn't sorted out. We were in a rush. We were in a hurry. There were disagreements from the beginning. To their credit, they worked through a 15th place finish and managed to get along, to have a good summer, to do all of that. But in the end, it still fell apart. We can't do that again. We can't do that again. This time it has to be done right. So I'm sure those discussions will all be there. And the issue is also who's qualified to do it. When it was summer, when Ineos came in and they were interviewing all those managers, Sir Jim wasn't qualified to sit down and have those conversations with coaches and say, this is the job, this is what it's going to entail, because that's actually one of the reasons a lot of those discussions fell apart and we didn't end up hiring somebody, is because Sir Jim sat down with people and they go, you don't know what you're talking about, to a degree, because of the details, not the big picture, not the general idea, not because he doesn't understand tactics, but because of the details. Day in and out. How does this work? How does that work? All of that. That's what was missing. So yeah, let's look at some of the news, and I want to tell you kind of the truth, and we'll talk specifically about summer and in terms of what's actually happening. So Rich Fay says Manchester United had no interest in short-term signings this winter, insisting any fit blah blah blah. Consider added a central midfielder, but deemed it unnecessary. Prioritizing a midfield refresh this summer with 2 players added. So yeah. So yeah, there's that. It says we're prepared to spend big for a marquee name, potentially club record fee. Elliot Anderson is the dream target, could demand a huge fee if Forrest stay up and he does well at the World Cup. Yes, he will, and it'll be 100 million. Interest also remains in Baleba and Wharton, with preference for at least one established on the top flight due to lower risk. We'll also target a left winger, etc., etc. Selling Garnacho, Rashford leaving, Yandu Mande is an early interest. Then we've got if United will still move for 2 midfielders, and this is where you think about the wording. It says, it depends who leaves. We know Casemiro's going. I'm told the priority is a number 6. Absolutely so. But if, for example, Bruno left, that would alter things. It's all in play. If United are playing Champions League, they need a bigger squad, and more money has to go into the squad. Europa League, you need a bigger squad as well. So it's some clever wordplay. Well said, though, by Andy Mitten, because he's right. If we were to miss Europe, we're not going to buy 2 midfielders because we don't need to. We buy 1, and we wouldn't be able to afford it. We'd go buy 1. We'd have them, Menu and Bruno and blah, 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 right? So you have to look at it on this basis. If you start doing the math, you go, all right, we're going to get 1 midfielder to replace Casemiro. But if we get Champions League, we need a bigger squad. But if we lose Ugarte, we need a bigger squad. If we lose Bruno, we need a bigger squad. And so you go, look, yes, if everybody stayed and we didn't get Europe, we would only get 1 midfielder. And that's how you understand the wording and the language here that goes behind all this. Because we're getting 1. We're going to get Europe. And it's very likely that someone's going to go. So there's 3. That's what's probable, in my opinion, is between 2 and 3. Now, are we going to get 7 players, top players in the summer? No, we were discussing this yesterday and saying, look, and this is where it comes into this, right? This from David Orenstein saying, summer window may not be as crazy as some expect, but the club has plenty to address. Central midfield, left side attacking, defensively there's an option, the coaches, all of that kind of stuff. It's because, look, we're not going to go out and say we're going to buy 4 midfielders straight up, no matter what. We're going to buy a winger. We're going to buy another backup striker. Harry Kane is coming to mentor Šeško, which is a silly idea. A center back, a fullback, another keeper. We're not doing that. That's not what we're doing. And we never were going to do that. That's not the way that we're going into the market. We're not going to do it like Chelsea or somebody like this. And this is what I've been explaining all along. We will spend good money on the right players for the right positions with a concise and clear plan for a squad. And one can easily state that now as to say, look, we're going to replace Casemiro. And we need and like Andy said, we need a bigger squad for Europe. Well, there's 2 already because we're getting Europe. So you start with 2. Oh, and we need a winger because Rashford's leaving. Even though he's already gone, he's leaving. So there's 3. Well, Maguire might leave, so there's 4. And that's what's going to happen. And this is kind of how it works when you look at it from a narrative perspective. And it's understandable because you don't want to walk out and say, we have 250 million, 300 million to spend. We're going to blow it all on day one, and that's the end of it. But you can paint it as, look, Rashford's still an employee of the club. Technically, he's an Anthony as well. We're selling 2 wingers this summer, so we got to buy a new winger. We're losing Casemiro, and we're getting back into Europe, and we have more games, so we need another player. We'll probably sell Ugarte, so we'll need another player. Maguire either stays or gets replaced, so we need another player. And now you're up to 5, just like that. With the basic things where one could argue you're sell to buy, except you already know these players are being sold. You know what I mean? You already know these players are moving. You already know this is happening. None of this is a surprise to you. None of this is out of the blue. None of this is crazy. None of this is anything like that. So don't worry about it. It's going to be all right. You know, it's going to be fine. Genuinely, it's going to be fine. We've been here before. We know how this works. Know how this game is played. And the reality of the situation is we'll be fine. You know, we're going to be letting people go. And there's already sales lined up. Don't forget Onana. Right. It's like there's a lot of things happening that are technicalities that will free things up. And the thing to understand as well that I got to say about finances and the club's finances, because they continuously get missed, right? Let me think how I can explain this. What's your current opinion on Ugarte, champion of the past? Yeah, look, when before we signed Ugarte, I watched what I've seen what he did at Sporting, what he was doing in Uruguay and such, and unfortunately, I think, you know, and it's happened to other players before. We just haven't seen, you know, the best of him. And last season, and since he's arrived, my thing was never about, you know, Ugarte's an amazing player and it's all great and stuff like that. But I don't like to see players get dogpiled on when they first arrive. And I think that a lot of the times that happened to him, and I think he got it really bad. Because there's a lot of people who just don't like the type of player he is and didn't want him in the first place. I don't think I've ever seen a player get so much hate from the moment they arrived than Ugarte in terms of how people rated him. And that's unfortunate. And he arrived at a difficult time when the manager didn't want him, all of that. And I just didn't like how the situation unfolded. And unfortunately, right or wrong, I know firsthand that the players see this stuff. And it hurts them. And for some of them, it has an effect on them. And one can sit there and be Roy Keane and say, well, it's your job. You're at Manchester United. You deal with it and all of that. That's fair enough. But that doesn't make it, I feel that's just a cheap excuse to be a dick, you know, to people. I think it's just a cheap excuse to want to abuse people for some. You know, when they first arrive, I think it's unfair to pass too much judgment on him, you know, and I think that severely affected him because I think that he wasn't actually bad at all for his first few months. In fact, I think he was quite good up through about February or so. And then, some things happened and it just started getting worse and worse and worse and confidence fell off. And I think he's really struggled since then too. And I think he's just been like that. Like, yeah, people were tagging his dad, his family, people like that all over. And it's just lame, man. It's just lame, you know, and you have to think about it and realize that it doesn't just cause an issue, with the players, with that guy. Other people see it and it creates a disconnect between the players and the fans. And I just thought it was highly unnecessary. And it's kind of what set me on my big anti-tactical arc, because I think a lot of them showed a lot of nastiness in that. And it's not surprising. I mean, you have a really, really big, this current big movement in football fandom on Twitter, especially, that is all about one-upping and point scoring and things like that. And unfortunately, it's not even against rivals anymore. You know, I'm not talking about like Flex talking about giving shit to Arsenal fans and his people like that and stuff. Like that's what it should be. You know, we should be one-upping Arsenal, Chelsea talking shit. Instead, you know, you got people will defend rival players to attack and rival teams to attack the other people on their own team and fan base and things like that. And it's kind of wild. And it's this very new, it's not that it hasn't been this way. There's always been abuse and overly stuff, but this new pseudo intellectual thing where people are so obsessed with the idea of being right on their opinions and such that, you know, that they'll utilize it to justify abusing players and other people to essentially protect themselves, you know, because they don't care about whether it's helpful, whether it's doing anything. It's all about being right. It's all about that and showing how intellectual you are. And I find it very sad, honestly. I find it very sad. And I'm not talking about as well people like that'll have fundamental disagreements with people who it's their job, you know, breaking things down, like actually their job. People like H2O and such, that it's like their job and they might see things a different way and all of that. But it's like there's other guys that just don't even care anymore about it. It's nothing to do with it. Like, you know, it's all about being right, and they're only happy if it works out in the way that they want, and it isn't. And Ugarte was a big part of that. Was one of the first signs of that, and it's why I pushed back on it and started to have that trouble. It's because I don't care if someone disagrees with my opinion on him. Never have. Most people I talk to don't rate Ugarte, and never did, and that's all good. But like I said, with him, I noticed it first and foremost this abuse that started going, simply because people didn't rate him as a footballer and didn't want to sign him. And it became like hoping he fails so that they can be right about it. You know what I mean? Hoping that he's a flop so that their opinion was correct. And that was a point I made about the whole Amorim thing, about people worrying, being scared about him being successful or something. It had nothing to do with that in particular. There's a lot. It's about specifically people are fucking scared that something they don't like, someone they don't rate, player they don't like, manager they don't like, person they don't like, will be successful. And they will attempt to tear them down out of the fear that that individual will be successful and that it will make them wrong. And it's the biggest new like wave of football discussion is that. And it happens with players, it happens with all sorts of things, that it's like the way to go. Because it's more important than being, than supporting the team. Both Ugarte and Amorim failed, though. Yeah, agreed. But like I said, maybe the criticism got to him. But there's plenty of players that didn't fail, and they'll unacknowledge that, hide it, run from it, like Dorgu. A lot of the same guys were calling Dorgu a total flop. He's shit, will never be good, bad in a forward position, bad recruitment, 4 weeks ago. We're doing that. We're giving him the same abuse, and now they're all silent. You know what I mean? And it's like, this is the type of stuff. They spent the whole first half of the season abusing the kid, and calling him shit. And it's like, and they hide from that kind of stuff, but that's, but they'll get away with it. People won't call them out and stuff like that. And it's fine. Maguire, it went like this for ages. People abused the shit out of him. And even for a long time tried to deny his turnaround, and all of that. But exactly that, Lexi. He doesn't deserve vile abuse. We should be hoping he comes good, not abusing him till he leaves. It's like Diogo Dalot. There's a reason why I've continued to try to give him credit when he does well, because I think there's being fair and there's being important. It's fair and important to look at players and say, it's fine to criticize when they play poorly, but then you must also really acknowledge when they play well and be right in that kind of assessment, and be willing to change on those opinions. And it's not about, calling players shit or things like that, but it's about being unable to, but it's about in some instances it turns over directly into abuse and things like that. And in other instances, you know, it's just criticism, but it's more about being, you know, there's just a lot that comes into it, and it's disappointing. It's disappointing, you know, because we should be able to, and you should be able to, not have the best opinion of a player, but support them when they're at your club, because you should be a fan. You know what I mean? And the same goes for people between others in the fan base. If you cannot handle, you know, the reason it's disappointing, and it doesn't really bother me from a perspective of what I get. First, for myself, I mean, God, guys, I got death threats and such over the whole Ineos thing and all of that coming in. Like, I've seen enough. Nothing really bothers me on that front of somebody getting mad about an opinion I have. But what is disappointing is what it says about people, you know? And what it says about people is that they have such a lack of self-worth that their opinion is their only thing.
Scott and Fred.
Yeah, the abuse. McFred was like the worst thing ever, and I fell into it. And I remember specifically using the Scott thing. Now, to be fair, I did it privately. It was somebody making it public was their own choice. But I even said specifically that on Scott McTominay's situation, for example, that was one of the ones where I felt bad about myself. I felt bad about myself, that I felt that I'd been publicly said things I wish I hadn't about McTominay, that I didn't think were right. And that I thought, you know what, I got to step back and be less like this and change my mind on that. And I've used that as an example myself of having done it wrong, and all of that. But it's mostly just this thing, what it says about people being unable to, I just think it denotes a severe lack of self-worth, where your opinion is the only thing that has any sort of value. And if it's right, then you feel you have value. And if it turns out wrong, then it's so devastating to you that you can't accept being wrong because you have no inherent self-worth. I think it's really pathetic what it says about people when they act this way. So it is what it is, you know what I mean? And it's like, again, it doesn't say that people can't criticize. It doesn't say that people can't have different opinions and things like that. It's about why does it have to get so personal with people, and step to that level where, you know, you're basically saying you can't. Yeah, there's a difference on internal forums between doing it on socials and things, but there's a point where you can't just attack the opinion or say, hey, that guy played bad. You have to attack the person and and try to knock them down massively. Sorry, guys. It's been dry out here. I split my lip, so that's why. My impassioned speech there split again. But 2 seconds. All right. We're back. But yeah, it's just being able to disagree on a reasonable level over opinions, and look at people and say, I've got a different opinion than you, so be it. I think that player played poorly. I'm not going to attack them as a human being, you know, and say things and do the things that are just so horrible, you know. And it's something that bothered me, and I went on a huge tangent from that Ugarte question because of that. But that's my explanation on it, because I remember that was the first summer, that was the first player we signed when I saw people go and just violently and in a nasty way attack the individual simply because they didn't want him, because they had a different opinion. That was the first time. And I defend that, and I'll continue to defend that. And that's why it didn't surprise me when those same people are the people who've been going after me for months and months and months, because it's who they are. They're pathetic. Not my opinions. There's people who've disagreed with me plenty, in here, everywhere. But the people who make it very personal, those are pathetic individuals. Very, very pathetic. They have no self-worth. And so their opinions, they're the only things that they hold to about being right or not. So, That's that. Like, I'll give you an example of like Benjamin Šeško. Very publicly, I've stated my doubts, concerns over somewhere on Benjamin Šeško. And I've also since then acknowledged strongly when he's done well, that he's done well, the improvements that we've seen, and given a big praise for it. It's totally fine to have doubts about players and things like that. It's totally fine to have different opinions about coaches, players, etc. It's when you can't acknowledge that you were wrong about something or that something has changed. And it's the same thing you get like even right now with this whole discussion over transfers. A month ago, right around then, I was pissed off at the club, at everything. New evidence comes to light, change my mind, understand what really happened, and see things differently. And that's what people should be able to do. That's all. So, yeah, sort of settling it on the whole summer thing and signings. Again, realistically, we will be signing 4+ players, including 2 or 3 midfielders, and that's what's going to happen. I wouldn't worry about it. Yes, it's sort of circumstantial. There's sign 1, and then if we do this, we'll sign 2, and if we do this, we'll sign 3. But those things are going to happen, and we will sign those players. One of the things that I think is important to keep in mind is that it's very, very likely that we really do want this idea of getting Anderson and Baleba. We really do. And so there might be talk in terms of Baleba's coming to United and all that, and that might be true. Might actually be well true. As I've said before recently, we do want Baleba still, and he would choose us. And I think Anderson is the big play, where we're going to go for 2. If we get into Champions League, we're going for 2. And those 2, we will be getting, Baleba's like the slam dunk, the one we know we can get, or we strongly believe we can get. Anderson is the challenge, is the one we're going to have to convince. Anderson is the one we're going to have to win over. Pep not being there makes a big difference, I think. I think it makes it a lot easier for us and all of that. But that's the challenge. And he's, and I think that Anderson is worth it. I mean, you compare Anderson here to like Declan Rice. Basically, just a more combative player, but similar in terms of qualities and things like that. Rice a bit more of a carrier, I would say. Anderson a bit more of a passer in that respect. But man, I was watching some videos and highlights of Anderson yesterday, and this is a can't miss player. This really is a can't miss player. But look, have no fear. We can spend money. One of the things about financial discourse that doesn't get understood, and I was going to try to explain this beforehand, but I forgot because I got distracted, is that as long as we are, like, you have to realize something. We've been spending about 200 to 250 million every single summer. Correct? Our financial situation is tight, okay? But it's tight. How do I explain this? It's tight on the basis of spending 200 to 250 million every summer, because every 5 years, the money you spent 5 years ago comes off, and you replace it with another amount of money. As long as our situation is stable, we can continue to spend. Let me give you an example. Let's say you've got a budget every month in your household that includes $2,000 a month that's going to food. You're spending $2,000 a month on food. If someone comes to you and says, do you want to buy this couch for $4,000? You're saying, look, money's tight. I don't think we can afford that right now. That doesn't mean you're going to stop eating. If someone comes to you and says, hey, we're going to use another food example, says, your money is tight. Your budget is tight. You're not saving any money. You're spending every cent. You're just right on the edge, but you spend $2,000 a month on food. Well, you're going to spend $2,000 a month on food the next month and the next month and the next month. As long as your income doesn't go down, As long as nobody loses their job, you can keep
Get
spending that
Tuchel MD,
2,000.
we might have a chance with Anderson.
Maybe. I think it'll be more than just Tuchel or the manager to do it, but I don't think that hurts. But when you look at the club, it's the same thing. We're spending $250 million a year on transfers. So long as we don't miss Europe, where we take another big hit on revenue, and our situation financially remains stable, i.e., we're not losing a bunch of money, we can continue to spend on transfers as we were before. Now, where we could potentially spend even more is, of course, that we have extra sales. We have players we're moving on that we don't always get to move on. We've got Onana could be sold, Antony, Højlund, Rashford, all of these people that will bring in extra funds. We're getting rid of Casemiro's wages, potentially Maguire's wages, potentially more. There's a lot of outgoing money that will bring money in. So money is tight based on a budget that includes transfers every single year, right? That's the point to understand. If we just stopped spending on transfers, our budget, we wouldn't be tight. If we stopped buying players, if we didn't buy anybody this summer, our finances are not tight anymore. We'd probably pay the whole credit line off, and we'd turn a profit of 50 to 60 million. If we stop spending on transfers, our budget's no longer tight. So our budget is tight on the basis of spending on transfers because we always spend on transfers. It's in our budget. It's there. And we're going to keep doing it. So that's the way to think about it. You know what I mean? That's the way you have to think about it. Is that, yes, our budget is tight. On a budget that includes about $250 million a year in transfer spending. So, yeah, we could, if we didn't spend on transfers, like, here's the crazy part. If we didn't spend on transfers, if we cut our transfer spending on half, we could pay $100 million a year to the stadium. Facts. That's just the truth. Now, I hope we don't do that. That's not how I'd want to see the stadium paid for. But that's where you have to understand the budget. The budget includes the highest net spend in England. So, yeah. With all those sales coming in and everything, yes, the budget is tight. Clever way to say the budget is the money for transfers is already in the budget. We can spend. We can spend like we spend every year. That's why I'm saying, though, I don't think we're going to go crazy and spend $500 million because there's still fiscal responsibility. We still want to stick to a good budget. We still want to balance the books. We still want to get ourselves back into the ability to be profitable so that we can ramp up the spending and increase our budget. But we will be fine. We can spend. And we're going to get Champions League. And that's even more revenues. So we're going to spend. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. The reality is, we will spend. We will get players. I believe we'll get a minimum of 2 midfielders plus potential sales of Ugarte, or if Bruno leaves as well. We will get a winger, and the center back situation is up in the air, and we could go beyond that. But it's going to be a good summer, and we will get good players, and we will get top players, and the money is there. And that's it. Okay? So don't worry about it. Don't stress. Don't be bothered by the stories and things. None of them are wrong for what it's worth. Like, you have to just look at what they're actually saying, because the people who say it they're clever. They're clever, and I rate them for it as well, because they're very good at, at saying things in a clever manner. It's a skill. It's a job. I like it, but we'll be fine. Okay? That's what I wanted to tell you guys today. So I think that's it. Was there anything else I needed to talk about? Anything else I wanted to talk about today? I don't think so. I think that's the end of it. I think that's the end of it. I think I'll leave it there. Let's see. So Ugarte's actually gone? No, but obviously, look, the 2-year rule is the 2-year rule. If he doesn't have a great end to the season and establish himself, like, he has two options. He'll either have a great end to the season and he'll be a player of value in the squad, or he won't, and they'll look to move him on. And that's it. And it's not that, and that's how it should be, right? For anybody. But yeah, I think I'll end it there. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you're having a good week. I appreciate you all very much. Stay positive. Keep going. Appreciate the community we're building here. Thank you to Jason. Thank you to Stuart for the donations, the messages, the gifted subs. Thank you for everybody doing all that. No more relationship advice to send us off. How about this? In line with what we just said. Remember, we're on the same side. And the same with you and the people you're in relationships with, that you work with, for the most part. Not always, but you married somebody, you're on the same side. You're in relationships with someone, you're on the same side. Just remember that. You're on the same side. Even if you have disagreements over opinions and things like that, you're on the same team. We're all on the same team, and I appreciate you all for being here on this team with me, okay? Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Appreciate you all. Smash a like on the video on the way out, and I'll catch you tomorrow, okay? Good night. Goodbye. Good luck. Be well.